Hello to you and to the world. I never know how to make these intros, so just gonna have to bear with me through it. Hi, my name's Gabby, and today we're gonna talk about some books that I think should be talked about more often. I'm gonna show you the books just so that if you clicked on this and you don't have any time to watch, these are the books. You can zoom in if you want, you can go through them, read the titles. We have two nonfiction books, so that's what I'm gonna start with. First of all, I think we should talk more about psychology, every element surrounding it, even if we're not into psychology. Just because we want to know ourselves better, just because we want to take control of who we really are and of who we want to become. And I think psychology books are a really great way to achieve that. And yes, there are a lot of terms that you might not know. There might be a lot of authors that you've never heard of mentioned in these books, concepts that you can't wrap your mind around. But it's so fun. You get to obsess over something for a little while. You get to ask yourself questions that you might have never even thought of. You get to take a peek into the world of psychotherapists and psychoanalysts and psychologists everywhere. Anyway, the first one is by a Jung analyst. It's called The Mystery of Human Relationship. The reason why I picked this up is because I was working at a bookstore. I got it for free. You know the drill. It's whatever is free and seems interesting, I'm just gonna take 30 hours to read because why not? It shows how the states of mind that can secretly undermine our relationships, both private and public, can become positive factors in transforming a relationship when brought to consciousness. This took me about 2 weeks to get through the first 10 pages, and then this was the only book that I took with me on a trip to Italy, so I didn't really have a choice. And I just read the rest of the book in 3 days. What I absolutely love about it is the fact that it takes paintings from Splendor Solis or, for example, Mutus Liber, which are alchemy books. It takes these paintings and analyzes them on a psychological level and also in a Jungian perspective as well. Anyone who embarks upon a thorough restructuring of his or her being, as in the alchemical way, is always filled with fear. My phone was an extension of me when I read this book. I was Googling every concept that I couldn't understand from this book. It's not like it really stuck with me necessarily. Well, I think in a way it did, but what I read in here has kind of gone away. It flew. Just because I didn't really actually put in the work to immerse myself in these concepts enough. But I think we should talk about the history of alchemy, the way that it translates into our lives in general, and what the alchemical process actually means in everyday life, because that is such an interesting conversation to have, and I think this book does it wonderfully. The next one is Dying and Creating by Rosemary Gordon. Dying and creating, or could we put it the other way around, creating and dying? Rosemary Gordon has chosen the first, the challenging title, and the one that stimulates the reader to find out how they interrelate. There are essential links between the facts and the concepts. Jung devoted much attention to the psychology of death, rebirth, and transformation. The author acknowledges her debt to him, to his creative spirit, and to the depths of his understanding. As she is a working analytical psychologist, much of the material in her. What was that sentence? I don't know, there's a period after that. But she is also a theorist. The human and the academic come together. Many Westerners in the course of their daily lives conceal their fears of death, and so they deprive themselves of the possibility of getting into touch with the hidden sources of creativeness. You know what I don't think we do enough of? We don't read books on the subjects that we're interested in. For example, if I'm interested in the subject of death and creation, them being linked, the concept of these two being somehow intertwined, I should look for books that talk about exactly that. For sure, there are many other books about that out there, but I feel that this is very approachable because it also talks a lot about different myths that have death and creation as two big symbols. And I think that if you have a symbol or a really big concept that you want to talk about and you present it in a very approachable story, a lot more people are going to understand what you're talking about. A lot more people are going to be interested in that. Truly, at my core, I think that this need to create that's present in all of us, ultimately, is there because we want to somehow imitate God. For a lot of us, the need to create is much stronger when we're kids, when we're closer to just having been born. So we have no judgments towards ourselves necessarily. We don't have anything to tell us, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Our parents don't tell us that our drawings are awful because we're just kids. They might hurt our feelings, right? So now if we show our drawing to someone, they make that face. If it's an awful drawing and they make that face, you just know how to read faces now. You know that your drawing is awful. So I think, well, I don't really know where I wanted to get to with that idea, but I think that us as humans, we want to imitate God. And by God, I don't mean that I'm religious and I think about this bearded man in the sky or whatever. I think we're well past that by now. But what I mean is that we want to imitate nature. We have a curiosity that we're born with. And when it comes to dying, you being closer and closer to death, I think we revert to that state from when we were kids. I think we somehow revert to not giving a fuck again, to being curious again, wanting to explore another side of ourselves, a side that we left behind a long time ago. The next book that I want to talk about is actually is on the other side of the book spectrum. It's called To Rise Again at a Decent Hour by Joshua Ferris, and oh my goodness, this book made me laugh so much. Religion, dentistry, human relationships, again, which is super funny because we just talked about that. Basically what this is about is this guy who is a very good dentist. He has his own cabinet. I'm not sure how it's called in English. He has his own little business. He's in love with the girl, but also he can't keep her because of his personality, but also he's so charismatic at the same time. Whatever, that's not what the book is about. Actually, the book is about him being impersonated online. I would have never picked this up because I'm not one to usually pick up books that talk about themselves as if they're super funny. But this was a very cheap book and I picked it up for some reason because I really liked the title. Now, I think we should talk about really funny books, don't you think? I think we should rise again in the name of very well-written, funny books with good jokes. Just like we watch comedy, we should be able to read comedy, right? Just like we read horror books. We should be able to read really funny books. I want to talk about E.M. Forster's The Machine Stops. The only time I ever stumbled upon this book was on a booktube channel, and I've never heard of it since. I bought this immediately. This was my first E.M. Forster book. It contains 2 short stories. The first one is sci-fi, the second one is more of a fantasy. This book is on this list because I think we should go further back than 1984 or Brave New World. We should go further back. I just don't think E.M. Forster is talked about enough. I don't think that we cherish him enough. In The Machine Stops, humanity has isolated itself beneath the ground, enmeshed in automated comforts. And in The Celestial Omnibus, which is the second story, a young boy takes a trip his parents believe impossible. Both of these are really well written and they are magic, and you can read this in an afternoon. Next, we have 2 Oscar Wilde books. In De Profundis, if you don't know what this is about, it's basically Oscar Wilde being imprisoned for being gay and having an affair with the worst guy in the universe. He was in love with this guy, right? And this guy put him in prison. And in prison, he had all the time in the world to write him this entire letter. Imagine being imprisoned, being able to spew out absolutely everything, having all that time to think about all the wrong things that this person has done to you, being able to think about all the wrong things that you did. I thought life was going to be a brilliant comedy, and you were to be one of the many graceful figures in it. That's what Oscar Wilde had to say to his lover. Wilde's letter describes the unbearable pains and blissful pleasures of his love, as well as his views on art, Christianity, and incarceration. We have a window, a literal window, to the soul of Oscar Wilde. We are not really talking about it enough. And you could argue that any book that an author has ever wrote is actually a window to their soul, and I would agree with you. And I will agree with you, and I do agree with you. But here, when it comes to a letter like this, it's not up for interpretation anymore. It's not as if we're saying, oh, so Oscar Wilde chose for this character to wear blue because he wants to represent divinity here. The Happy Prince and Other Stories. I started 2025 with this book, and it made me cry. Okay, let me just tell you what it's about. Dear Prince, I must leave you, but I will never forget you. And next spring, I will bring you back 2 beautiful jewels in place of those you have given away. The ruby shall be redder than a red rose, and the sapphire shall be as blue as the great sea. In The Happy Prince, a statue, jeweled and opulent, keeps careful watch over the city and its inhabitants. Enlisting the help of a swallow, his selfless acts bring comfort to those most in need. I just have to make a little parentheses here. If you've ever watched the Hans Christian Andersen cartoons, or if you've ever read the Hans Christian Andersen stories, you're gonna absolutely love this book. If you feel like the child inside you is yearning for those types of stories again, you should pick this up. And then we have another story called The Nightingale and the Rose, which is a tragic tale of personal sacrifice in the name of love, while in The Selfish Giant, the end of an eternal winter finally brings springtime and happiness. But it's not like that. In The Selfish, I cried for The Selfish Giant, okay? I was on the floor wishing for the Selfish Giant to have friends. Why is this on this list? Because I think we should talk about these enriching stories a lot more than we do now. I think right now we get lost in these TikTok books and a lot of other, everyday life bullshit that we have going on, and forget to turn back to what makes us human. And sometimes, unfortunately, we're not as empathetic as we should be. I know I'm not. I know I have a problem with empathy. But I feel like fiction is helping with that. I feel like especially these very short but condensed, simple stories, they help with that. And they bring up so many emotions inside me that not a lot of books bring. A 20-page story from this guy fires more emotions in me than a 400-page TikTok book ever could. Okay, next we have Richelle Mead. Were you expecting Richelle Mead? I don't think so. When I read this book, I was mystified and I couldn't stop talking about it to my friends for a whole week. I read it when I was about 16 years old. I never reread it since, but I think I'm gonna reread it in the next few years. Soundless is on this list because I think it gives such a unique feeling. I think it might have been also because I was only 16 and very impressionable. Usually, if you want to be absolutely immersed in a world, you read an 800-page fantasy book and you go the safe route. For as long as Faye can remember, there has been no sound in her village. Her people are at the mercy of a mysterious faraway kingdom which delivers food in return for precious metals mined from the treacherous cliffs surrounding them. When villagers begin to lose their sight, their rations shrink and many go hungry. Faye's home, the boy she loves, and her entire existence are plunged into crisis under threat of darkness and starvation. Until one night, Faye is awoken by a searing noise and sound becomes her weapon. We should preach books that make us feel like we're not living in the world that we're living in. Next, we have a writer that we already talk about a lot, but I don't think we talk about his not so famous works. You already know 1984. You already know Orwell. Or, well, do you? You might have not read, or you might have read his other works, like A Clergyman's Daughter, Coming Up for Air, Keep the Aspidistra Flying, or Down and Out in Paris and London, or Books or Cigarettes. He has many books out there. A lot of us stop at 1984, which is a shame, and we do that with a lot of authors that have a very famous book, and we only read that book and never go back to those authors again. I think after we read a really famous book from a very famous author, we should buy another book from them, and then if we like that, we should get another one, and if we kind of like that, we should get the next one and the next one. Again, it's about finding that rabbit hole that you want to get into and not climb out of for the next 3 months. It's about always knowing that you're gonna have something to read and devour. We should read about that author's life. We should watch documentaries, read biographies and autobiographies or letters or whatever. I think we should not stop ever at the first book that we read from them. If we find something that we appreciate about an author, if that something is big enough for us, we shouldn't stop reading them, because this is the way that you find new favorite writers. This is the way that you find different concepts. This is the way that you become interested. Okay, next we have one of my favorite writers of all time, Death in Her Hands. Oh my god, such a good book, one of my favorite books in the world. This is about a woman named Vesta who moves alone after her husband died, if I'm not mistaken, and she has a dog, and she is walking the dog one day, and in the forest she finds a note that says her name was Magda. Nobody will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me. Here is her dead body. And then she gets obsessed with finding her body, or at least finding the killer. And the thing is that we never really know. It's like we're put into her trance with her. It's like we're reading a crazy person's diary. And I think also Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead does the same thing as this. And it's so good. And I just love stories that keep you curious and keep you wondering, what the fuck am I reading and what the fuck is going on? And I think that's a little bit different from it being, for example, a detective novel, because in a detective novel you kind of have to figure out who the killer is at the same time with the detective. But here you kind of ask yourself, okay, did this really happen, or is she actually insane? I think what I want to say at the end of the day is that I love unreliable narrators. There's something so cathartic, but at the same time confusing about it. Unreliable narrators should be studied. We should go Sherlock Holmes on them. We should print out their traits and put them on the wall and get red strings and get all detective on them just to figure out what the fuck is going on. The last one that I want to mention today is Sourdough. Also, I do want to say that these 2 books I got as a recommendation from Ariel Bissett's videos back in the day. She mentioned both of them. She's such a similar reader to myself. Okay, why is this book important to talk about? In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it's important to give praise to really unusual concepts that we tackle in the books that we write. And this book has a really weird premise. Sourdough starts taking over the world, and I believe we shouldn't sleep on that. I believe we should talk about these weird premises and never stop talking about them. That's about it. It was good seeing you. Thank you for being here. I am currently reading Lena Dunham's Not That Kind of Girl, which is an absolute masterpiece. Why didn't I put it in this video? I don't know. She just turned 40, which is insane. Somehow she's the voice of my generation too, so I don't know how she turned 40.